The Seattle Kraken get their first win of the season. I mean, it's the preseason, but I think we did get a little bit more of an understanding of what a Lane Lambert-led team will look like in Seattle.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Seattle hockey fans, welcome to another episode of Locked On Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you your favorite team, the Seattle Kraken, every single day. Erica L. Ayala here, your host of Locked On Kraken here in Seattle. I've been able to meet some of you at preseason, at training camp. Thank you so much for saying hello. I'm also a contributor at CBS Sports, where you'll find me talking women's basketball with the WNBA playoffs happening right now. And I am an accredited media member for Milano Cortina 2026, where I'll be writing about women's and men's ice hockey, which is why I'm also one of your co-hosts of the Women's Hockey Report, which is our weekly digest on all things women's hockey that lives on our Locked On NHL channel. As always, thank you to our everydayers. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day, your midday listen, your late night listen. Either way, we're excited to have you. And the Seattle Kraken, they get their first win of the season. Joey Decord was in net. We also got to hear him a little bit on the broadcast, which was fun. He's such a personality. I think this was a good win, a good first game. Obviously not the first game for the rookies or prospects that have been in camp, but I think this was a good game overall. If we look at some of these stats, I'm just going to go back to NHL.com here. Edward Shala, or Shale, I believe, is the first Kraken member to score. I thought there were some plays where he didn't seem quite in rhythm early in the game. So for him to get the first goal of the game, assisted by Eberle and Fiddler, who I think had a pretty solid serviceable minutes, I liked to see it. There was a bounce back even within the game. And I think that's something that Lane Lambert is going to be uniquely qualified to assess, because that's what his ask really is of this team, not just the prospects, but the veterans overall. But we'll talk a little bit more about that. Actually, I forgot to let you know the rundown for today's show. This is what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the win. We've already started that. Then I'm going to talk about specific standouts, get into a little bit more depth. I'm going to talk team level first, specific players, and then give you my early assessments and where I think this team is going. I feel much better now that I'm seeing it in action. That being said, it's still early. Okay, now let's go back to this game. Again, Shala gets the Kraken on the board. Then you see that Newman gets a goal, Jaden Schwartz, and then Newman. So a Schwartzy sandwich there in between two Newman goals. Vince Dunn was very active in this game. I believe he had 4 points overall. He had 3 points, excuse me. He assisted on 3 consecutive goals between Schwartz and Kakko. And Newman. Kakko got the primary assists for both of Jani Newman's goals. So we did hear a little bit from Kakko and Newman regarding playing on that Beniers line. And I am going to talk about Maddie Beniers. If you saw my post-game reaction on our social media channels, then you already know what I feel about Maddie Beniers, but we'll talk about that a little bit more. This is what I like about this game, with the only exception being in the third period. The Seattle Kraken won the shots on goal 13 to 7 in the first frame, 7 to 4 in the second frame. They were outshot in a big way, 14 to 4 in the third frame. But overall, the Seattle Kraken, I think, had a pretty solid game here. The penalty minutes were wild, and that had to do with Hayden, who on his own got 19 penalty minutes. And you'll hear what Lane Lambert thought about that. Giveaways, didn't love that we had more giveaways, 10-6 by Vancouver. But I think this was a good game in that it exposed some things it exposed some things and it revealed some things. And that's ultimately what preseason is all about. If we look at some of the players that were in this lineup, we had the lines were as follows. I'm actually going to share this with you, so bear with me just 1 minute. The lines for the preseason game, we see that we had Newman and Kakko on either side of Matty Beniers, Jaden Schwartz, Shane Wright in the middle, and Jagger Firkus. Talk about both of them a little bit. Chalet, as I mentioned, goal scorer, was with Catton and Eberle. And then Oscar Fisker-Molgaard with Jake O'Brien and John Hayden. Now, we heard earlier in training camp from Lane Lambert that we shouldn't look too much into these line combinations. I kind of already did. I know that's what he's going to say, and it makes sense. I think what we see coming up for tomorrow's game is going to be really interesting. But, on the defensive side, Dunn and Larson, Evans, Alexiak, Olofsson, and Fiddler. I really liked Fiddler's game. Joey Decord started, and then we had Nike Coco played the third period. So Joey had 2 periods, and then he hopped on the mic for us in period number 3 for those who are watching on the Kraken Hockey Network. I think that the lineup was pretty solid. Definitely some holes, but again, we'll talk a little bit about that. What I got from this game is that, at least as of right now, and I want to put a big asterisk, caveat, whatever you want to say, as of right now, Lane Lambert is getting what he has asked of this team. I saw a lot more discipline. You're going to hear from Lane Lambert shortly. And I actually asked a very specific question, or I asked a question about offense. I liked what I saw from the offense. And I do think one of the areas that we know coming in that Lane wanted to see more of, he addressed that. We'll talk about it. There were some players I thought that did really great in that area. Other players, not so much. One of the things I noticed right away, let me know in the comments if you were at this game or you watched the game. But one thing I noticed right away was the passing. The passing looked super sharp from the Seattle Kraken. I think they were doing a good job of getting to the offensive zone quickly. There's no shot clock. Again, I'm rewiring my brain because I'm also covering basketball right now. So in basketball, of course, there's a shot clock. You have to get across the timeline, as it's known, or half court in a certain period of time. And then you only have a certain period of time to shoot. We know that doesn't exist in hockey, but the urgency with which the Seattle Kraken was moving into the offensive zone, I liked. And then there was a patience. That was one of the things I wrote down in my notes. There was a patience when they were in the offensive zone that lent to sharp passing. I saw lots of movement. And so I asked Lane about that. Again, I think he agreed with me on some points, maybe not so much on others. Or there was one specific thing, I should say, that he pointed out, which I would agree with. But here, what Lane Lambert said post-game, again, about, I want you to hear what he said about Firkus. I want you to hear what he said about being in the offensive end and what he said about John Hayden as well.
Hi, Coach. Jani Newman scores 2 goals tonight. I mean, we all knew he could shoot, but the first goal, he's going to the net, gets himself positioned in the right place. I mean, how much is stuff like that going to matter when you evaluate, all the complete part of his game towards getting to the NHL?
Yeah, no, he's his second one was a good shot. The first one was going to the net hard. Great play by Kakko. The thing that excited me about that goal was our D zone. Started in the D zone, and we killed the play, and then it ended up in the back of their net. So from my perspective, that's what I'm talking about when we're talking about defense and translates into offense. So Jani played well.
Coach, what did you think of John Hayden's game tonight with the 19 minutes of penalties on the one play? Like, what's your reaction to decision to engage there, and then he goes out and scores a goal later in the game as well?
You know what? I have all kinds of time in the world for that. Sticking up for his teammate. Outstanding job by him. And, we'll try and kill those off all day long when we feel like somebody's taken a little bit of a liberty with one of our teammates.
And thinking about a couple of other younger players tonight, Jake O'Brien, Berkeley Catton, what did you see from those players tonight?
Yeah, I saw, from both of them, I liked both their games. O'Brien, real cerebral player, really solid defensively. Honestly, he just keeps getting better every day, and he's had a good training camp. His progression has been very, very good. Katz, he's got that dynamic ability and that dynamic speed, and he showed it on a few occasions tonight.
Coach, how did you feel about Jagger Fergus's game tonight?
He got caught a little bit with all the penalties we took. He got caught a little bit in the shuffle. He's not a killer, and there's a couple guys that didn't maybe get the minutes that they potentially needed. I didn't mind his game. I would say he's a little bit of a victim of circumstance tonight, and we'll be looking to get another look at him for sure. But when he was out there, I thought he was fine. Well, I think you're always concerned when you take, I think we took 6, and a 7th one was a penalty shot. We need to do a better job of that. We can't take that many penalties. That's just plain and simple. And we certainly have plenty of video and plenty of repetition on our penalty kill to continue getting that better.
Things.
I like the effort a lot. I thought we played hard. I thought we did things that we've been working on from a defensive standpoint. I thought we did a lot of good things offensively. The first period we controlled the game, had a number of good quality scoring chances, and we took a 4-minute penalty, but that was all part of it. But in terms of just sticking up for your teammate, but I thought we did a lot of good things in a lot of different areas. What I really liked a lot was we were on pucks tonight. We were hounding pucks, creating turnovers, and then turning it into offense.
Coach, can you talk a little bit about what you saw in the offensive zone? Seemed like the guys were pretty active and moving the puck around pretty well.
Yeah, we were moving it around. I want to see us get to the net more. I thought in the first period we created a number of opportunities, and there was a number of rebounds there, and we didn't get to them. So that's something we got to improve on.
Lane Lambert talking to media there. I asked what was the last question there, but you heard that he wants the offense to have more of a net front presence. And so coming up on Locked On Kraken, I want to talk about some players that I think did a better job of that, and then go back to some players that Lane mentioned in passing and give you my analysis. And then we'll close out the show thinking about where I see the direction of this Kraken team under Lane Lambert, and if I think we can maybe surprise some folks. We'll talk about that and more on today's episode of Locked On Kraken. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our friends over at Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, investments, etc. And when you don't have the full picture, you are leaving money on the table. And that's where Monarch Money comes in. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface. And you can use it on your laptop or your mobile device. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. So I am the clientele. I actually do use Monarch Money. I started using it for my business as I was onboarding a new bookkeeper, someone to help me keep my finances in order. And it was just a way to transition from what logically makes sense to me to then a system that was a little bit more advanced. But Monarch Money is still something that I use for the day-to-day. I love the dashboards, especially the cash flow, so I can see what's going on as I bring on other creatives. And so, you can identify whether you're not saving enough, helps you notice any inefficient investments, etc. So don't let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNHL. Thanks as always for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination, making us your first listen of the day, your midday listen, your late night listen. Either way, we're happy you're here. Erica L. Ayala, your host of Locked On Kraken, and you heard from Lane Lambert in that first segment. I want to talk, though, and go back to Jani Newman. Definitely a standout. He had 2 goals, but what stood out to me, and I've talked about this before, is his physique, the way that he is focused in camp and how he's performing on the ice is a young man that really wants to make the NHL. And he's been asked that. Jeff Baker has an article talking a little bit more about making a case for Jani Newman, and he's doing all of the things. Now, Newman had a knack for goal. I think when you hear what Lane Lambert said to me with regard to offense, Newman is one of those guys, especially on a line with Coco and Beniers, where he can be the guy that's attacking the net. Net front presence. You heard Lane Lambert talk about rebounds. I think also he wants guys to be there disrupting the defense a little bit more. And I think Newman can have that game. I think Coco does such a great job. He's a really skilled facilitator. I do wonder if Lane Lambert will maybe put an ask for Coco to be a little bit more aggressive, and I think he can be. As far as that line, I want to just wrap with Matty Beniers. I said this jokingly. I meant it, but also, a little having a little fun with Matty Beniers. I feel like, to be more technical, he wastes a lot of energy sometimes with his lateral movement while he's skating. And I felt that he was a lot more compact. So any skating coaches who watch Locked On Kraken, please, please, please comment and respond. I don't know if I'm using the right terminology, as I am not a hockey player, as sometimes people in the chat remind me. But jokes aside, snarkiness aside, I get the sense that, but I'm an athlete. And so you have people who their natural motion just kind of has them all over the place. But what we know is, even if you think of a running motion, the more compact and you want to use your energy to drive and propel you to whatever direction you're going. And I just felt that Matty, he had such a wide hockey stance. And, you want that when you're skating, I'm sure. But I'm sure with anything else, there's a little bit of a tipping point. And, if I liken this to basketball, which again, I'm in the throes of covering playoff basketball right now, you have people who their shot maybe is unique, and whether that has to do with injuries or just what their comfort level is, how they were taught, you don't always want to mess that up. But when you're looking at elite level athletes, they're always looking to refine things. And sometimes it is small, fundamental details. And to me, it looked like Matty Beniers was able to, again, simplify his motion. I also used to play baseball and softball. And sometimes you have to simplify your swing. Maybe you don't do it forever, but just because maybe you're pulling your head out, or your eyes are moving, and so you simplify things. And I get the sense that Matty Beniers simplified his skating motion. It's something that I'm hoping I get to talk to him about. So stay tuned on Locked On Kraken. And again, any skating coaches or people who are better at analyzing that, keep an eye on it, because I in that first game, it was just so noticeable to me as someone who watches a lot of Kraken games. And of course, I believe in 2025 being the year of Beniers. So he stood out to me. Fiddler, and it's, Striatic was someone that I was able to catch up with, also 365. We caught up at Kraken Community Iceplex the other day, Sunday, I guess. And, we were talking about a few different players, and Fiddler really stood out in a good way. And when you have someone, especially on that back end, Fiddler again here we can see was with Olofsson, so a younger defensive, grouping there. For me, he was a lot of what Jake O'Brien was as well. So I'm going to kind of talk about these two, not specific to their role, but in how they played. You could tell they were young, but what I liked is that they weren't trying to do too much. And that's like a finicky thing. Like if you asked me, how can you tell if someone's trying to do the most? There are people who are dramatic cases, and then there's nuance, there's subtlety, and it's hard to describe, but I think the best way I can describe it is like I didn't see a lot of lost motion. They seemed very self-possessed or in control. And it comes off as effortless, but that's not it. I mean, they're putting in work, but it just is smooth. It's not choppy. I just really liked what I was seeing from Fiddler, and the same from Jake O'Brien. It wasn't perfect. It's not about perfect. It's about fluidity sometimes, and ease and comfort. And I was really impressed with what I saw from Jake O'Brien. I'm not exactly sure what I was expecting. And there were some things that I noticed from Berkeley Catton. I talked about this in my immediate post-game video. He got absolutely rocked open ice. There were times he was getting caught up against the glass early in the game. I think he figured it out a little later. And then, a case can be made that the game just opened up a little differently. But Catton and Chalet, excuse me, those were two players that I have it in my notebook. My notebook's over there right now off camera. But I wrote down that, there were just some broken plays, a little bit unsure. I think Berkeley Catton had a little bit of difficulty dealing with the physicality. Jake O'Brien, a taller player, and, he's not particularly big yet. He has some weight to gain for sure, but he looked composed. And same for Fiddler. Liked what you saw there. Olofsson's got great size. I think Olofsson I didn't notice, and sometimes that's the best compliment you can give to a defender. I think it was solid, serviceable, again, within control of his self. But those are some players that stood out to me. We did hear from Lane Lambert about Jagger Fergus. And he's a player who, I might need to go back to the film, because there were times where you could see he was very active. And there were times where I think he was trying to make things happen, make things work. And sometimes the execution was just slightly off, just a little bit flawed, but his instincts are definitely there. And so those things are fixable. Again, you heard from Lambert, we didn't see him as much because there were a lot of PK minutes, and he's not on that special teams unit. I'm trying to think of who else stood out to me. Hayden got some stick taps. Lane Lambert likes the physicality, and I'm okay with that. I know I just said what I said, and I meant what I said. I'm okay with outward aggression. For me, there's a tipping point. I just think it's really silly to try and punch someone bare-handed, bare knuckles while they're wearing all of that hockey equipment. I'm just not ever going to get into that. And like we heard from Lambert, being able to stick up for your guys, he's like, we'll spend as much time on the PK if that's the case. And was it Larson? I believe it was a defenseman, gnarly, cross check. And well, there are a few hits actually. I'd have to go back for the Hayden one, but there was one, I think it was the second goal for Vancouver. And I think it was Larson. It makes sense if it was Larson, because Dunn sees Larson get hit. It was an ugly hit, really gross. not cool. It wasn't called. It wasn't seen. And so you see Vince kind of, as Vancouver is going on the breakaway, he's trying to tap the guy. That's actually, I should know this, and I closed out NHL.com, but they had a penalty shot. The Vancouver Canucks got a penalty shot, and that was on that play. So right before that play, Larson got hit from behind, an ugly hit, and Vince Dunn, I think if you watch that clip, you'll see him talking to the officials. But also, Vince, he didn't respond right away. He got caught up trying to teach a lesson, so to speak, and Vancouver kept the play in motion, and that led to a penalty shot, which ultimately was a goal. So that was Chase Stillman's goal. So it was the second goal. And for me, that was like, oh, I didn't like that play from Vince Dunn, because if you're going to go after a guy, you better make sure you don't miss when he's on a breakaway. But then Hayden gets, involved there, and, he kind of handles things on the back end. It was a nasty hit for sure on a veteran. I'm almost positive it was on Larson. Let me know in the chat or in the comments, because that to me stood out. Vince, I thought, had a solid game, talked about how he had 3 points. It was just that one thing. And that's what you can do in the preseason, is be nitpicky. So what are some of the things that, just in a few times with chatting with Lane Lambert and observing how he's running things, what is this Seattle Kraken team all about? I will tell you my early observations coming up on today's episode of Locked On Kraken. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets. Now, people who are utilizing FanDuel, they rave about so many options to make good on that first $5 bet. You can do same-game parlays, jumping in live as the action unfolds. I love talking about futures bets. We'll talk about that throughout the week to see where the Seattle Kraken stand. Kraken Hockey Network did their rankings, and I'll talk about that a little bit. But also, FanDuel is quick, it's easy, and it's the best way to add a little extra energy to your Sundays. So are you ready to play? I hope you're ready. I hope the Kraken are ready to play. We'll talk about that coming up. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. First game in the book, Seattle hockey fans, and we've got another one coming up on Tuesday. I've moved to a later recording time, so just in a few hours, we'll be back after it at Kraken Community Iceplex. Actually, let me go through that schedule before I break down what I've seen from camp. And also a reminder, if you follow us on social media, we've got a really cool graphic we worked with the Locked On staff to create. So we're keeping everything organized. We announced the day, and then the schedule for the day, and then any clips that come in will be under that day. But for Tuesday, September 23rd, it is a game day. The Seattle Kraken will hit the road and take on the Calgary Flames. But there will be the group that is not skating that will be on the ice by 8:30 tomorrow. First, it's the goalies, 8:30 to 9. Then 9 to 9:30 on practice rink 1, and then 9:30 to 10 practice on rink 2. Media availability will follow that. We will get the guys that are going to suit up for this second preseason game. They hit the ice at 10:45 a.m., and that will be on rink 1. And then we'll get to talk to the guys. Game tomorrow, 6 p.m. Pacific time. Kraken at Flames at Scotiabank Saddle Dome. I know we have some folks on the TikTok that have talked about being able to go to some of these upcoming games. I believe the comment, though, was from the game coming up Wednesday, which is at Rogers Place against the Edmonton Oilers. Pretty much a similar schedule. It's actually a later start, though. Instead of 8:30, start at 11:50. But again, we can talk about that tomorrow. And of course, we'll have that posted on social media. On Thursday, it's more of what we've seen from training camp. It will be broken up into the blue group and the white group. Do want to just go over a few things here that we haven't talked about on the show yet. But the Seattle Kraken have announced that there are some guys dealing with injury, including Jared McCann. Now, Lane Lambert, again, talked at practice, of course, and he mentioned that McCann is more of a maintenance thing. But what he also talked about is that, yeah, I mean, camp is it's aggressive. It's definitely putting the guys through their paces. I was talking, I mentioned this, I think, on Friday's episode, talking to Twin Turbo, who goes to the rink, said hi, had a great conversation. And Twin Turbo and I, yes, Twin Turbo, I think you can kind of figure out where that nickname comes from. I will not reveal their identity. Twin Turbo is what we will go with. But so Twin Turbs and I were talking, and I do think the fitness level, just from my eye test, I believe in my eye, my gut, my instinct, and my eye test is telling me that these guys came in fit. Now that makes a lot of sense. On the one hand, yeah, come in fit after last season for those returning. Number two, you got a new coaching staff. The only holdover is Jessica Campbell that you have to impress. And number three, I get the sense that Lane Lambert, he hasn't shared explicitly, and I'm going to try to do some digging. But I remember when I played in college, my coach, it's not necessarily that they gave us workouts, but they expected us to do certain things, and it was on you to do that. But some coaches in some seasons, the message is a little more hard-hitting and direct than others. And so I get the sense that Lane really set the tone with what his expectation was coming into this camp. Needless to say, that doesn't preclude, unfortunately, hockey fans from dealing with it, or hockey players or fans sometimes from dealing with injury. Jared McCann is day-to-day with a lower body injury. Nathan Villeneuve, someone I was really eager to see, out for the remainder of training camp with a lower body injury. Brandon Montour out after a bursa removal, is expected to be ready for the first home game. Leighton Road is expected to be out for 2 months, dealing with an upper body injury. Max McCormick is out indefinitely with a hip injury. And then we also had Lindgren that on the non-game participants on Sunday caught a puck to the face. But Lane Lambert expects that he will be okay. Definitely bruised up, but that's the update with regard to injury. Not great, but especially that McCann injury. But it is good news that he's day-to-day. Also missing Brandon Montour. 2 fixtures we expect to be mainstays in the starting lineup. And for the AHL Firebirds, the captain, Max McCormick, out indefinitely. That's a tough blow. I just wanted to give those updates now before we close the show. What am I getting from this team? What are the vibes? The vibes are this team is focused. And I love that because there were too many times last season, and I should have known this prepared me for the WNBA season, where not only am I a national writer for CBS, but for my company, Black Rosie Media, I cover the Seattle Storm and the New York Liberty. Between the Kraken, the Storm, and the Liberty, I covered 3 teams that had a much better team on paper than they performed. They did not execute. And the fact that Lane already has this team focused, I love it. Now, I told you earlier in the show, I have an asterisk, a big question mark, or something that I'm going to keep an eye on, because I felt that Dan Bylsma did a really good job in training camp and preseason, getting the team to be aggressive offensively. We know he wanted to ram the puck down the opponent's throats. He wanted them to be fast. He wanted them to be on the forecheck. And we saw that until we didn't. I don't, it's almost like a vibe, a feel. Lane Lambert communicates in a much different way than Haxtell, in a much different way than Dan Bilesma. He is direct. He is also soft-spoken, so we're going to have to crank up the volume sometimes when he's speaking. Hopefully the Kraken staff will handle that for me so I don't have to do it in post-production, or so Joe doesn't have to do it. He's a man of few words, but he's direct and he's unapologetic. I love that so much. This man has told this team they're going to be defensive, they're going to be disciplined, and they're going to, I don't think he's using this term, but they are going to be a sandpaper team. This, excuse me, this is going to be a sandpaper team. He is demanding that. Non-negotiables. I asked him about non-negotiables the other day. That's non-negotiable. Like, I mean, I get the sense that is the standard. That is the only way that Kraken players will see the ice, is if they lean into that, lean into the defense, lean into the discipline. Wildly undisciplined team. Loved Dan Bilesma. Wildly undisciplined team. And you know what? In hindsight, you know that I talk about Coachella Valley a decent amount on the show. Kind of knew that about Dan Bilesma coming in. So we did see Jessica Campbell on the bench. Lane told us she will be handling, of course, player development, which we have also heard. Dan said this last year. The organization said this last year. Jason Bottrell is saying this again this year, as well as Lane Lambert. Player development is not just the prospects, it's the players on the squad. No one better than Matty Beniers and also Shane Wright. When it comes to that, I think Ty Cartier is someone that is probably going to re-up with Jessica Campbell. Another thing we heard is that she'll be handling face-offs. So we'll see how all of that transpires. And again, having an interesting conversation just with some folks that I was engaging with at Kraken Community Iceplex. But, you know, very curious to see how Jessica Campbell is utilized in the Lane Lambert era. She's a carryover, and Lane Lambert has been a carryover, okay, in his career. That can be a beautiful thing and a great thing, and there are definitely times, I don't know what the percentage is, it seems like there's a decent amount, maybe not, you know, it's not 50-50, maybe more 60-40, where sometimes an organization brings a carryover, someone from the regime that is no more, and it's just not enough newness to break some of the bad habits. So I'm not hoping for that, and I'm going to keep an eye on it. I'm going to keep an eye on how Lambert handles that, how Campbell handles it. Overall, too soon for me to make my big, bad, bold predictions, because I've been down this road before with this team. I like the early returns. I like what I'm hearing. I like what I'm seeing. I think they walk it like they talk it. Walk it like they talk it. Walk it like I talk it. That's what I'm hoping is the messaging for the Seattle Kraken team. But I've been down this road before. I'm just telling you my early observations. They got to prove it to me. To us. And this team, this organization has a lot to prove. And it's not necessarily in the wins and losses. Structurally, organizationally, communication-wise, play style, discipline, this team has a lot to prove. And Lane knows that, and he expresses that. My early take is that he's expressing that to the team while also keeping them focused on how to improve. Super focused, super simple, and simple in a way, simple is maybe not, simplified. If we want to do all of these things on the whiteboard, then we have to be better defensively. We have to be a disciplined team, and we have to buy in to the non-negotiables. In my mind, from my observations, from what I'm hearing from Lane and from other people, that's how this conversation is going. It's not that it's simple, but he's simplifying it, because at the end of the day, that's what I wanted from this team last year. It's simple. It's not, excuse me. It's not that it's simple, but it's doable. And you do it by focusing on 1 to 3 things and doing those as flawlessly as possible. Simplified, not simple, but simplified. That's what I see. Not simple, but simplified. That's the vibe. That's the ask. That's the charge of this team. And if the passing, if the offensive zone entries look the way they did on Sunday, I am here for it. Were you at the game? Did you watch on the Kraken Hockey Network? Let me know in the comments on social media. I want to hear from you. What are your takeaways? Not simple, but simplified. That's, I feel like, the theme. Adding it to my vets versus new threats. Not simple, but simplified. We'll see what other catchphrases come out of the season. A reminder, be kind to yourselves. Be kind to others. Hold fast. Stay true. Loud and proud we say, let's go Kraken. If you see me around the rink, please come say hi, and I will catch you on the next episode. Peace out, everybody.